to talk about subscriptions, a topic I hate. Actually, it's okay, some of it is, but I'm really passionate against it for the most part. I was, way too many years ago, paying $8 an hour to play games online at the time, and it's a good thing I had a business at that point of my own, because then I could hide the expense in the books, and my wife didn't know, and nobody knew, but it was a fun pastime, but very expensive. And so I loved as a player the first time subscriptions came around. And you heard Eric mention EverQuest a minute ago. Like, I was there, and it was so great that I could play like all month long for only $12 or $15 instead of $8 an hour like I had been paying before. So as a player, I get why subscriptions are, interesting. And maybe that's part of what has led to kind of an overall boom in subscription services, not just in the game space, but in many spaces. I mean, we all see and know and probably watch a whole bunch of video game subscription services. Right? This has changed over time. The concept of ownership of the content, the ownership of the media that you have. You don't need a disc anymore, you don't need a DVD anymore, you just go back. If you want to watch it again, you could turn on Netflix again and you watch it again, as long as Netflix still has it available. There is plenty of content that is out there. And I'm sure that if you look at this and are a subscriber to one or more of these services, you'll remember exactly why, or maybe not, but probably remember exactly why you joined that service to start with. The show that you couldn't go without, or why you just canceled HBO after last Sunday. The same thing exists in music, right? Music has gone from that physical media to a download and buy it for 99 cents a song model, to a model where it's a subscription, and now if you pay at all, you pay a small amount on a monthly basis to be able to save your playlists and maybe have access to a little bit more music. And this is where, when Eric mentioned a minute ago about disruption, this is where we've seen tremendous value change in the video and in the music industry. And I don't think we're terribly far behind, because are there video game subscription services, or are they just on the horizon? Well, I'd say absolutely they're available and they're here now. And there's more coming. But we have maybe a little bit more of a complication than just the straight music or the straight video subscription service, because we have a variety of players who are all trying to get you interested in their subscriptions. First off, we have platforms. And this is the part that everybody gets relatively easily. It's like Xbox Game Pass or PS Now, or Apple just announced Apple Arcade earlier this year. These are all subscription platforms designed for the community of a given game service. And their premise is, come stay within my walled garden and have all the content that you could possibly ever want by subscribing to our subscription. On the other hand, there are folks like EA who've decided, as a publisher, they have enough content that they're going to create their own subscription. And it's platform independent. In fact, you can see EA has subscription services on PC, on Xbox, and have just announced it coming to PS4. So here's a publisher with enough content of games that they can make their own subscription service. And it's not just EA. Humble Bundle's done the same. And there's a number of other aggregators of games that have created a content subscription model to try to keep people and keep subscribers active and engaged with their subscription service. And lastly, we've seen, really probably in the last few years, a rise in the increase of game-only subscriptions. And these are subscriptions that are specific to a game. For example, with Dota Plus, right? It's an ongoing allowance of currency, it's access to additional challenges, an ongoing battle pass, or a premium battle pass, if you will, that are there. And it's a way for you, if you're a fan of that game, to stay connected and have all the benefits of significant play at a cheaper cost than it is to pay for all of those things individually. Again, these are for fans of the game. If you're not a Dota player, why would you subscribe? So, bunch of different mechanisms for subscriptions, but why? Why are people doing this? Is it just because they had pity on people like me who was paying way too much for the games on a monthly basis, and so they thought, hey, you know what, we'll make it cheaper for Chris, because a subscription will help him out in the long run. He'll hide less from his family that way. No, I don't think so. They're in it for the same reason we're all in it, is that they believe it makes more money to have a subscription than it does to have those games sell on a transactional basis. Well, if that's true, then shouldn't we all be in great shape? I don't know. Let's take a look. So let's look first at the platform. And why would a platform be interested in having a subscription? And the good news is it ties the players to their platform. Hey, if I own an Xbox and I have Xbox Game Pass, I've got all the games that I need. Well, at least they hope all the games I need. I don't need to go anywhere else. I don't need to play games anywhere else because I have those games as part of my subscription. It does tend to devalue the content, though. Back to the question of how many full games are you going to buy from Microsoft when every full game they make is in the subscription? So that would be none, right? And then how about the games that the rest of us make? I mean, we make games, Ubisoft makes games, and we publish them on the Xbox. Have we seen an impact? Absolutely, right? There's this whole set, once you're an Xbox Game Pass subscriber, there's a whole set of content that can keep you busy. Now, you know what? Maybe not every game is in that pass, but there are certainly more hours represented in that Game Pass than you can spend gaming in a month or several months or probably several years. And that's where the real competition comes in for people like us. It's not the question of whether or not we have a better game. Of course we do, right? The question is, in the time when someone isn't buying that better game, what are they doing? Are they saying, well, let me look at the next game Ubisoft is making? Or are they doing like what the rest of us do on Netflix or on HBO when it's not Sunday? They scroll through titles and content that we've never heard of and say, well, maybe there's something I can watch here or play here, right? Because the content's there and the content's free. It's a competition for time. Now, for the platform, though, it's perceived as a good deal. A few bucks a month, and you've got all this content. That's awesome. And of course, the analysts and the stock analysts like it as well, because what it turns revenue into is a consistent, predictable revenue stream. And that's much more valuable when you think about the stock market and how analysts look at a company. It's much better to have an ongoing revenue stream than it is to have transactional revenue, even if it's the same amount or even if the transactional revenue is higher, right? Because that transactional revenue in our hit-driven business is in fact just that. It can fluctuate. And the good news is, from a platform standpoint, and you as a player, there's always a good flow of content that's available there, so you're never worried about having something to play. And we see even people like Discord having a subscription. Now, why would Discord have a subscription? Because they represent a gaming community as well. And their objective is to keep people in their gaming community, right? Not to have you have to leave there. Your friends are there, now your games are there as well. So now let's look at publishers. Why would EA be interested, for example, in having a subscription service? Isn't it better to go ahead and just charge people for the games? Well, maybe, but I would guess not, based on they've continued it for several years. And basically, it's a way of rewarding loyal players. And what it lets them do is it lets them trade excessive revenues for predictable revenues. And actually, it doesn't really get rid of the excessive revenues anyway, because there are still mechanisms for pay beyond just what's in the game. You can still transact at a microtransaction level within the games. And so there is a way to spend more money as well, but it does give you a base of play that you can start from. So again, that recurring revenue stream certainly has a bigger impact on Wall Street than the transactional revenue stream does. Although, unless you're a publisher who has a significant breadth of content, the amount of content that you bring on board is possibly going to be a challenge. Having enough variety or having the depth of content that people are going to want to subscribe for. And then if you think about the individual games, right? How do you, once again, this is rewarding the loyal player. We have our own subscription with Just Dance Unlimited. It's a way that you can pay one fee on an ongoing basis and have access to all the past years of the Just Dance songs that have been in every version beforehand. Now, that's certainly a lot cheaper than it is to go out and buy each one of those songs individually. So, we're glad to make it easier for the player to let them pay one time or once annually for a subscription that keeps them engaged. And the good news for us is we do make more money that way, because we find that people subscribe. When they're subscribed, they consume more. When they consume more, they talk about it with their friends more. It's more engaging, and it tends to spread overall. Right? It removes that barrier of every additional song that you want to buy to dance with. So maybe there is something good about this subscription thing, if you've got maybe the right content. But for us, it turns it into a predictable revenue stream, which is great, right? It turns it, and it really also, and this is a little bit of the social goodness here, it kind of protects the player, and potentially, if the player is you or your children, from that excessive spending or that out of control, impulse purchases as well, right? So it's an interesting impact on design where we've thought about game design, and from a microtransaction standpoint, how do we get people to buy every single moment, to now we don't need to worry about that as much anymore if it's part of a subscription. So what about the subscription player? How are we going to keep her happy? Is she going to be happy? I don't know. Well, what's the values? I mean, I was certainly happy when I paid less, but is it just about paying less? Well, certainly there's a few values when it comes to the subscription side of things, right? It's simple. It's easy to think about. I just subscribe. I don't have to worry about anything else. The content is curated and it comes to me. And usually there's a large selection of content, so I don't have to worry about having not enough to play at any point in time. And I can play whatever I want, whenever I want, at any particular time. And all for one low monthly price. It almost sounds like an infomercial, right? But is it really worth it? Is it worth it for the player? Well, when we think about that, I mean, most of these subscriptions go from anywhere from $20 a month for PlayStation Now, $10 a month for Xbox Game Pass. Maybe there's some premium versions in there for $15, some for $12. I've seen some for as little as $5 a month for old content. But let's just say for a moment that we've got a $15 a month subscription, right? So over the course of a year, it's $180. That's 3 games, or 1.5 if you buy the premium or ultimate versions of the games. That's assuming you buy them all as soon as they're released. But if you buy some on sale and some at full price, maybe that's somewhere between 3 and 5 games that you'd be buying on a year. That's your exchange. Do you buy 3 to 5 games a year? Does it work out monetarily for that? For a lot of gamers, it probably would, right? Particularly if you're buying the premium versions of the game and all that content is included in the subscription. And then when you look, a number of places have annual prices, right, where it becomes just $100 or $120 or $130 for a year's worth of content. Well, that's basically the price of one Ultimate Edition game. So as long as you're going to buy one game that's in that subscription in a year, you've essentially paid for that subscription all year long. Now, how does that actually even work from the standpoint of a player? It's great. From a publisher, from a game developer, I guess it's good. It has to be good. Because don't they know how much their players pay on an annual basis? I guess they do. So from a player's standpoint, and particularly if you have a sampling type of behavior, the answer is clear. It's yes. It's a good value for you as a player. Good value in money. But for the subscription player, it's not just about the money. It's about the content, right? It's really about the content, and that's what comes first. Like, why would I subscribe to Dota or Just Dance if I don't like playing Dota or I don't like the dance, right? I'm not that customer, so I'm not interested. And why would I subscribe to EA Access if I don't like sports games, right? So content becomes key. And there's a few, as I mentioned earlier, folks that know that all too well. The reasons for people subscribing and recently leaving HBO are just that, content, key pieces of content. So, when we look at that, the question is, what are the key pieces of the content that can drive the usage and the subscription, where Eric mentioned that re-engagement as well. So now let's take a look at developers and say, what's the value to developers? Well, clearly, it's another method for discovery of your game. Your game can be featured as part of somebody's subscription. Well, if they choose to feature it, I guess you don't have much say in that, but let's assume they want to feature it. So your game can be featured, and it can, it helps with acquisition. You've got hundreds of thousands, if not millions of players who are part of this subscription who you might not be reaching otherwise. And that's the whole plus to the subscription model, is maybe there's folks who can afford to subscribe at $5, $10 a month who don't have the means to spend that on an annual basis, or they do. But well, it's easier to spend it on a monthly basis. But what it does let you do, if you listen to the publishers, and the platforms who are asking for your content, it does let you take advantage of your catalog titles. And basically, their message is just sit back, count the profits, put it in our subscription service, it'll all be good. Because, it's really about you, the developer, and that's why there's a platform subscription service. So let me put this in different terms. If you're sensing a little sarcasm or whatever here, I'll talk concretely. How about Ubisoft? Like, are we in all these subscription programs? No. We've experimented a couple times. We even now have a couple games in PS Now and another game in Game Pass, Microsoft's Game Pass, because we want to learn. We want to see how it works. We want to see if, in fact, we would make more money if I actually could quit that part of my job and go do something else. But I don't think so. We're good at our catalog titles. We're good at using them. If you listen to our earnings reports, over half our revenue comes from our back catalog titles. So we're active all the time. Our promotions work. Right? And wherever we happen to be selling our games, we put together many promotions on an annual basis. And we just find that by offering someone even big discounts, 70% off, we make more money than we get by being part of someone else's subscription program. It's just that in a multi-developer content subscription, for us at least, we have got no control. We don't own the message to the consumer. We don't own when our content gets displayed, and there's no consistency or predictability about our revenue stream. It's very easy for someone to switch off and to try another game instead of continuing to play our game. I mean, the games we design are hundreds of hours long. Right? They're stories, they're open world adventures, and for someone to come in 1 or 2 sessions and say, well, I understand what this game is about, and move on to the next, there's no way that we get the value out of it. So for us, it's not really been something that we've chosen to engage in. So as a developer, since most of you are developers in the room, what do? How do you take advantage of this change, this shift, or a disruption, as Eric would call it, that certainly is present and is going to be growing in the industry? Well, I think you do that by learning the mechanics of the subscriptions, and then just like playing a game, you min-max the system. Right? Each of these subscriptions has a mechanism for making money and for paying out people. So let's take a look at what those are. In general, there's 3 ways that you'll make money in a subscription environment as a developer. You'll either get a fee to make a game, you'll get a license to use your game for a particular period of time, or you can just chuck your game in with the rest of them and get some kind of a revenue share. So let's talk about each one of those one after another. Development fee first. This is where you hear money. Everyone's throwing money around. All the new subscription offering platforms. Apple's got tons of money, and Microsoft's got tons of money. Everybody's paying money to have new content made. Well, that's because they need content. So if it's there, and if that's something that you can make money at doing, by all means do it. It's pretty much a work-for-hire model, right? Where you take the development fee you get and the cost you have, and hopefully you have something left over. Because after that, there's not much for you. There's generally no ongoing revenue share, or very little, and you don't own the IP in many cases. So you need to be happy with what you get as that development fee. And that really, getting that development fee is all about your pitch and the team behind you. And that's how you can make sure you get the biggest fee possible. Now the next is a license fee, and usually this happens when the game's out and has been running for a while, or it's a promising enough game, it's just about to be out, and it's essentially an opportunity cost for you, right? The period of time that you're going to be in the subscription offering is a period of time that people on that platform won't be buying your product. Why would they? They can get it through the subscription, probably cheaper than they can buy it. Right? So the question is, how many units do you expect to sell over that period of time, towards, and whatever your reasonable margin is, and then that has to be more, or less, than the fee that you're going to get from the platform. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense. So if you are that kind of a game, or if you want to make that kind of a game, for the subscription market, and you have a license, like if you had the Game of Thrones license or the Westworld license, those are probably attractive games to a publisher's or to a platform's subscription program, because it gives them reasons. It brings in new customers, and it also helps customers stay month after month, right? And that's really what they want. And whether it be episodic or whether it just because of the name recognition, they want to keep people in and coming to their platform. And the last model is a revenue share model. And basically here, the players' revenues that we would all pay on a monthly basis to have access to the content would go into a pool. And the developers get a share of that pool based on the usage of their games. So it breaks down into 2 different types of revenue share, either by hours or by session days. Right? And when it's hours, you basically take the number of total hours played by your game in that month, the players play your game, divided by the number of total hours people play in the month, and that gives you a share percentage. So if you were 10 hours a month and the whole service was 1,000 hours a month, you'd have 1%. The other way of looking at it is session days. And some companies or some subscription programs say, how many days of the month are you engaged in that particular game? And then what they do is they take and add up the number of session days you have, and then divide it by the total number of session days for all games on the platform, and then that turns out to be your share percentage. Again, another example, if somebody's active on one day in a month on your game, and there's 100 different games that go on, then you're 1%. So let's take a quick example from a calculation standpoint and figure out just how much we can make from a player. So let's assume a 70-30 rev split, because that's pretty decent. I mean, we haven't seen subscriptions yet go the Epic way, and not 88-12 yet, but maybe someday, right? And on $15 a month, that leaves $10.50 for all of us to split up for our content. All right, well, I'd like $10.50, but I don't think I'll get $10.50. If you assume there's 100 games in the gaming service, now let's say 100, that's pretty low, because isn't everybody's claim that I've got 500 games or 300 games or 700 games? Let's just say with 100, because the math is easy that way, right? So, and everybody's game is played exactly equally, right? You're not being screwed at all by some newcomer game into the market, where everybody's going to play that game because it's the newest thing around. Everybody gets the exact same amount of time. So that's pretty simple. 100 games, you're one, it's 1%. So your 1% of the $10.50 is 10 cents a player. Can you make money on 10 cents a player? I don't know, that's what you have to figure out, right? Is your design and development cost less than 10 cents a player per month? How long will they play? Well, that's assuming they keep playing, right? It's tough. But instead, if you just put your game on sale for $5, right, instead of whatever the price it normally is, you'd have to get 50 times more subscribers to pay for one guy who bought your game on sale. This is the problem that we have with this, right, at Ubisoft. It doesn't work out for us, because basically being average isn't the way you win in a subscription game. You can't just have an average amount of play. So how do you win? Well, you game the system, right? You mess around. You now know, or maybe you knew before, how it is you get paid, so change the design of your game. Have it be more engaging, more hours, more visits, maximize the number of time people are there, the amount of time somebody's there. These are somewhat free-to-play design mechanics, but they're not, right? So in free-to-play, would it be great to just have somebody turn on your game and leave it running while they went and did something else? Not really. But in subscription, it would. Not that we would ever do that, right? But if it did do that, right, can you imagine every day, 24 hours a day, your game being playing? You'd have a good revenue stream there, maybe. But I think the thing to think about here is it's not about designing games where there are walls and limits, right? Think beyond free-to-play. There's not paywalls here anymore. There's no additional cost that's going on. In many cases, you won't be able to charge for additional items in your game. So be generous. Give it away. Make it be an amazing place to be. Have there be increasing rewards. Instead of saying, hey, after you've played for 2 hours, your experience rate drops. Right? You're not going to earn experience as fast anymore, because you're watching out for someone's time. Flip it around. Hey, every hour you're there, you double the amount of experience points you get. Now, of course, there's probably some amount of time that you don't want to have somebody sitting in front of the screen, but okay, just have them be able to leave the game running and keep accumulating those session days, experience points. So make it fun to stay. Basically, I think what you want to do with your game is you want it to seem like the Ellen or the Oprah show. Everybody's screaming and they want to be there, and everybody gets a prize. It's amazing. You want to keep coming back to your game. So the real key, as you think about, is maybe you can make money with subscriptions. And we keep trying ourselves. We haven't figured it out yet. I don't know anybody who has, but I think the only way we will be able to figure out in the long run is if we actually design for the business model. And if we design for the business model, then we've got the chance to win. So thanks very much for listening to my discussion, rant, whatever you want to call it, about subscriptions. And I think we have a moment or two for questions.
So you mentioned at Ubisoft your view is to not be in favor of subscriptions. I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are on Stadia and how Ubisoft fits into that, because of course GDC, Stadia was showcased using Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Mm-hmm. To your point, it's a 100, 200 plus hour game. So how does it derive value out of a platform like that?
Well, so two things. The reason that we don't like subscriptions is because we don't make the same amount of money that we make if we sold the game. If we could make the same amount of money that we made by selling the game in general, I would love subscriptions. We just haven't figured out how to do that yet. And Stadia, yes, we have a good partnership with Google there, and they showed Assassin's Creed, but they haven't talked about their business model yet. So once they do, I think it'll be clear, what the value proposition for players and for publishers like us is.
So Stadia was mentioned. I wanted to speak more generally about streaming services. How do you think streaming services and subscription models are going to be working together?
Well, streaming is essentially a distribution mechanism. Right? And so there are subscription models that have streaming as a distribution mechanism, and there are subscription models that have download as a distribution model. So an interesting case study for that might be to look at PS Now, which initially was a streaming-only subscription service. And once they added the capability to download the games, they've since then said publicly that more people download and play the games, and they've seen an increase in their subscribers from people who are just purely streaming. So I think that that's partly a factor of the technology of today. If everybody had unlimited bandwidth and very fast access, it wouldn't matter at all whether you download or whether you stream. But I know where I live in an apartment building, I get great access or bandwidth speeds at like 2 in the morning. And from 6 to 10 at night, everybody's watching Netflix or something, right? And so my bandwidth goes down. Quit grinning like that, you know what they're watching. So my performance goes down. I'd rather download that game, right? And maybe a great model it would be like, hey, stream it to me when I first buy it, and then I'll so I can get immediate access, and then I'll play it afterwards on a local machine where I have better performance. Once that bandwidth problem goes away, I think it's going to be transparent whether it's streamed or whether it's downloaded. All right, thank you very much.